Good morning everyone, wherever you happen to be on planet Earth today. It's chilly here in the Lowveld and in the Greater Kruger National Park. Steel grey clouds are scudding across an eerie sky. That is why I'm wrapped in this blanket. Enough horsing about. Welcome. You are on a live game drive. My name is James Hendry. Behind me on camera, well actually in front of me and behind you on camera, is Jean-Dre. Yes, there we go. He's regrowing his beard. Yes, it's not as impressive as it was at one stage, but certainly it will get there, no doubt. On the other vehicle we have got Scott Dyson, the inimitable, and behind him 6'4" of great South African flesh in Brian Joubert. Now, in case you are wondering why or how or what is going on this website that you have stumbled across, you are on a live interactive safari. We are live in the Kruger National Park, like I say, at dawn. The weather is 14 degrees, that's Celsius, and about 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Not the ideal game viewing conditions, but we have forged out here in order to try and find you and bring to you some of the wonders of the African wilderness, and in a place that we are privileged to traverse for at least 6 hours of every day, which is a wonderful privilege for us. It's interactive. Hashtag Safari Live if you'd like to talk to us on the tweet, or questions at WildEarthTV if you'd like to talk to us on the email. And please feel absolutely free. Don't feel any shame or sense of trepidation should you wish to ask a question or make a comment. We do love to hear from you, especially on some of the days when the game viewing can be a bit quiet. When the weather's like this, it's not unusual for us to have to concentrate on some of the more in-depth discussions about the ecology of the area and maybe look at some of the smaller stuff, because it's just a little bit difficult to track animals, and animals tend to hide when the weather's like this. Sometimes they do that when the sun's out too, and sometimes they're all about when the weather's like this. We just don't know, and that's part of the joy of being where we are. And just to give you a little bit of an idea, if you happen to be in a different part of the world, South Africa is at the tip of Africa. That's why it's called South Africa, of course. And we are in the eastern section of South Africa, and in a place called the Kruger National Park, an iconic wilderness game destination. 2.5 million hectares of wildlife area, contiguous. Animals are free to come and go as they please, wherever they like within that area. And we are on a little section on the western boundary called Djuma. And Djuma is next door to another place called Arathusa, which we also traverse. So we're going to take you around on about 1,500 hectares of this pristine, beautiful African wilderness. You're welcome. Lovely to have you on board. Let's go and see what we can find. The plan today is to basically try and pick up any tracks that we can. Didn't hear any lions in the morning or in the evening, so not sure where the lions are at the moment. Perhaps some leopard tracks, perhaps some lion tracks, who knows. We'll keep you posted as we go, and please talk to us whenever you like. It's not actually that cold, I'm just a bit of a prima donna. Okay, here we go. Tie myself up. Okay, Jean-Dre, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I do hear a great amount of alarm calling. You hear that? There's something going on in here. There's a drainage line that runs along here. Let's just go and have a quick look. There's a Drongo alarm calling. There's a Franklin's alarm calling. There's a whole lot of very upset wildlife around here. Perhaps they've seen something exciting, like a predator. A lion or a leopard, or African wildcat or something like that. There are the Drongos up in the tree there, calling loudly, and the Franklin was just over here. We'll keep an eye out. Now we must watch for the tracks. Seems to be an old road along here somewhere. Right, I'm just going to stop here and have another listen. I don't see any tracks on the road. I'm just going to see if the birds continue to alarm call. They seem to have calmed down. Anyway, we'll look around and we'll keep looking for tracks, and that's basically how it will go this morning. Safari, while we're sitting here listening to see if anything else shouts, you ask a question about Junior, the male of the Nkahuma Pride, who is about 3.5 years old. And you say you heard that he was seen alone yesterday on Biffle's Hook. He was indeed seen alone. He seemed to have been separated from the pride. The pride was chased off. The entire pride was chased off a buffalo kill by one of the Birmingham males. So that's a bit of a disaster for them. Anyway, Junior was somehow separated from them during that scuffle, and he was found on his own. I'm not sure whether he has rejoined the pride or if he's still on his own or what's going on, but no doubt the radio will hear. The radio will tell us during the course of the morning. So for those of you who perhaps don't know, we are in radio contact with the properties to the north and south and east and west of us, so we do hear what's going on with the wildlife of the area. All is now calm. Anyway, we'll drive up here and we'll see what we can see. Thank you for that, Safari. Oh, Rondre? Oh, it's too late, it's gone. Sorry, we had a black-crowned chagra there, an unusual bird, and very seldom do they sit still for long enough for you to film them, or in obvious areas. They kind of live in the understory of the trees. Very beautiful call. Always an air of expectancy around the early morning like this, when the road is free of any kind of vehicle movement and the story of the night is revealed through the tracks that move along the road. Got some buffalo tracks, some various antelope tracks, no leopard or lion tracks at this stage. Going to drive slowly along and see what we can pick up. On the road there we have a francolin, and while the francolin is not the most interesting bird in the world, it's always a good idea to stop and listen. So that is a crested francolin, and they're actually quite character-filled. They're the most common francolin that we get here, and they're the earliest call in the morning. They and the grey-headed sparrow are the perfect alarm call if you happen to live out here. I'm not going to attempt to emulate its call. It is very loud, and at the distance that that francolin is standing from us, it would probably be fairly painful. And what it's doing is fossicking for little bits of food. It will be looking for seeds. It's probably found a little piece of old elephant dung, and there may be some termites that are eating that dung, and the francolin will then eat the termites. Nothing out here ever goes to waste. And for all the animals here, from the smallest francolin to the largest elephant, this is a difficult time of year. There is not a lot to eat. Very dry still. So a francolin, which is normally a seed-eating bird and perhaps will also eat insects, there are obviously no seeds around at the moment, so it will have to have a diet predominantly of insects that it can find on the ground. And of course insects are far more common in the summer months and during the wet than they would be during the dry season like this. So difficult times. The only times, of course, that it is, or the only animals that it's easier for now, of course, are the carnivores, because the bush is clear and so it's easy to give chase. So the wild dogs and cheetahs and hyenas don't have a particularly bad time of it now. And as the animals weaken as we head towards the wet season or deeper into the dry season, so they become easier for the carnivores to catch. Isn't that a lovely little bird? Not normally on their own. I wonder where the rest of his or her covey is. Beautiful markings. It would seem a shame to disturb him. So I think we'll just sit for a little bit longer, if you don't mind. You know, we're always so respectful of elephants when they're walking along the road. We don't want to disturb them, or leopards that are perhaps hunting. We don't want to disturb them. Then when the francolins are fossicking about, we tend to just kind of shoo them off the road. So in an attempt at a wilderness apology, we'll let this one finish his meal. He's very sweet. Lots and lots of francolins we get out here. That's one of 5 species. The other ones being the Shelleys, the Swainsons, the Natal, and of course my favourite, the little golden-headed Coqui francolin. There we go. Right, I'm afraid that's it, Mr. Francolin. Shake yourself out. You're going to have to move fairly smartly. No further alarm calls, I'm afraid, but wonderful little francolin sighting. Hello Ramona in Germany, very good to have you along. Thank you for your offer of the hot pot of coffee. I look forward to the day when the internet is capable of transferring that to me, or certainly the pleasure that I would derive from it. Very delicious it sounds. And you'd like to know if there are any parts of Djuma or Arathusa that we haven't visited on Game Drive. No, Ramona, there are definitely no parts we haven't visited, certainly no roads. I suppose the middle of some of the blocks you wouldn't have seen, but I think if you've been watching this show for say a year or more, you would definitely have visited every little piece of Djuma and Arathusa. 1,500 hectares, or in acres, that's probably about 3,500 acres, is not a huge piece of land out here. And so we do tend to drive just about all over Djuma most days, and Arathusa a little bit less so, but we do drive around both quite extensively. So Ramona, I would say that if you've been watching for a while, you've probably seen just about all of Djuma and Arathusa. Certainly on the roads, like I say. Let's see what else we can spot. And what you should also keep an eye out, everybody, is signs of spring. Keep an eye out for signs of spring, flushes of green, the odd pale yellow flowers on the acacia and combretum trees. And of course now some of the birds which have very drab winter plumage will start to go into their summer plumage. The widers will get long tails, the weavers will go yellow, and the red-headed weaver of course will get a what coloured head, Andre? Red head, correct, well done. And just on the subject of weavers, quite interestingly, we had a comment from Karen in London. Karen, I'm not sure if you're watching still, but I'll tell you in summary what she said. she said that you can predict whether you're going to have a dry or a wet season from where the weavers weave their nests in the tree. So lower down and closer to the middle, you're likely to have in fact, she said closer to the outside of the tree, you're likely to have a drier season than closer to the inside of the tree, which should indicate a wetter season. Now, while I don't know if this is true or not, I then went and asked a few people around the fire last night, and it would seem that that's been heard. Karen is from Zimbabwe, and she heard it there. A few people here in the Shangaan or Tsonga culture have a similar sort of belief. And then another chap, Eugene, who does all our technical stuff, was saying that I think in the Eastern Cape, where he has done some work, the Xhosa there also say the same sort of thing about with slight variations about where the weavers build their nests. So I'm going to keep a careful eye out on where the village weavers and southern masked weavers do weave their nests this year. If I see a weaver, I'll show you what I mean. We have had a few technical difficulties with this weather. We're not really sure why, but we are on it. I think everything's working fine today, and we're just waiting to hear for one of our towers to come up, and then we'll probably head off west towards Arethusa. Scott is having a couple of difficulties with Wendy, but he will be up and running fairly soon, I hope. Otherwise you're going to have to stare at me for three hours. Comment from Natasha just while we're talking about the lions, and I think we're going to be talking about lions for a long time. There's some impalas, nice, well spotted, Andre. We'll just stop here and have a quick look at them, and I'll talk about Natasha's comment. She's quite interesting that the Birmingham male managed to chase all of the Nkuhumas off a kill. And Tasha, it is interesting, but it's not uncommon. A big male lion, and I think he's the biggest of the five, is a terrifying thing when he's got his blood up and he's hyped up and he's in the middle of a territorial dispute, and they would not have wanted to challenge him. He would have probably caused some very serious damage, and they've already had one lioness killed by one of those Birmingham males, and perhaps it was the very one that chased them off the buffalo kill, and it was actually at a buffalo kill that the last one was killed. I'm just getting an update on the radio, everybody, about tracks of the Nkuhuma Pride. Yeah, so they do seem to be on our northern boundary, heading in a westerly direction. Scott is up there, so he's going to have a look there, and we'll see what we can find. It would be nice to see them. I haven't seen them for a while. They're running around the place, terrified, and wondering what is going to go on as this male coalition takeover takes place. And just a quick recap for those who perhaps don't know, while we look at this beautiful little herd of impala. The lions are in turmoil. 5 young males, young bucks, have come in from the north, and they've chased out the 2 dominant males of the area. And while the territorial takeover is not quite complete, so things are very unsettled, and the 5 males have now killed 3 lionesses. One of the old males has killed a lioness. It's all kind of in turmoil, and so very interesting lion times at the moment. You can see these impala are ruffled up, and by that I don't mean psychologically. I mean that their skin is ruffled, and that's to try and trap air underneath the fur, and that helps them to stay warm. always do that in the winter and on chilly mornings like we're having now. Just exactly like a bird that puffs out its feathers in order to trap more air. And I'm very sorry about the vehicle that went past, but that was a necessary evil, of course. That is Eugene on his way to the Gari repeater to try and make it work. He'll probably have at it with a hammer or kick it a few times, and it will then start to send a signal which will allow us to traverse onto Arathusa Terra Incognito to the west. On we go. Very nice little thought from Jessica in Ohio. Jessica, you would like to know, would Junior likely ever join another coalition, or will he remain on his own, or what will happen to him? Jessica, it is not unheard of for unrelated male lions to join other coalitions. Just looking at some hyena tracks here. So that's not impossible at all. But would he join any other coalitions in this area? Well, that's difficult to say. Now, what is interesting is that there are two males called the Styx males, just about a year older than Junior is now, and they are knocking about in the south. They do come onto Arathusa every so often, and they are offspring, we think, of the Matimbas. The Matimbas being the ousted two. Now, Junior is also, as far as I understand it, an offspring of the Matimbas. So they are, in fact, half-brothers, because they come from different prides. Were they to meet up, there may be some sort of kin recognition, I'm not sure, and they might actually join up. And so that is an interesting thought. It's possible. I don't think he'll join up with the Birminghams. I think there are too many of them and they're unrelated. But, you know, who knows? Very interesting postulation. And that's precisely what Natasha has been hoping might happen, that Junior might indeed join up with the Styx males, who she feels are very handsome. They certainly are. One of them has got a magnificent haircut. He looks like a really well manicured and well coiffured young male. The other one's a bit more spiky and, what should we say, what could we liken him to? He's a bit more punkish, I suppose. Junior, of course, is still sporting a very wispy beard at the moment, but it is getting a bit bigger, and he actually, his mass, I think he's going to be a very big lion if he makes it to adulthood. The other thing, unfortunately, that is a real reality for Junior is that because he is on his own, because he doesn't have a coalition partner, and because there are so many young males around the area, he's in real danger of one day getting himself into trouble with a coalition that is in the area. He's just at that age where he should be leaving the pride, but because he doesn't have brothers, he hasn't left the pride. He's been seen trying to mate with his mother and his sisters, which of course is rather distasteful in human society, but in lions it's not entirely unheard of, and they can inbreed apparently for up to 6 generations before there are too many deleterious effects. So yeah, I think his days, he's got about a 50-50 chance of making it, I think. The smell this morning is one of moisture, and I can never remember that word, so if you want to send it back through to me, that word that when rain touches the ground and gives off that beautiful smell, I can never remember it. So if you'd like to send that through to me, that would be wonderful. But it did sprittle a little bit last night. I woke up to the odd drop of rain falling onto my tin roof, and it certainly wasn't anything to stop the dust or for anything like the grasses to drink, but there was a little bit of moisture. and that beautiful smell is now wafting through the air here, which is wonderful. Andre, do you remember that word? No. I must have heard it 500 times. Just coming into a little clearing here, where normally we would see some zebra, but because it's windy, they will disappear into the thick stuff where they can escape too much of the wind.
Check quite carefully, but I haven't seen any tracks across.
Purple rain. We would like to know, on the subject of rain, purple rain, thank you for your question. You'd like to know, is there any animal that I'm afraid of? Purple rain, human beings I find to be the most terrifying animals. I find most of them very intimidating, so they are the animals of which I am most afraid. I'm assuming you mean out here. No, not in as such. I don't feel any abject state of fear, except for things like black mamba, and that is often an instinctual fear. I mean, most people have an instinctual fear of snakes. Something like a mamba, for example, unless you're trained to handle them, if I had to go and catch one, for example, I would be very afraid. But that's, I don't think there's anything that I have a real terror of out here. There are certainly animals that I'm more respectful of than others. Elephants can become quite easily threatened if you don't watch them carefully. You don't want to startle a buffalo bull while you're on foot. Lions, not so much. An angry leopard is obviously something that can be very terrifying, but mostly if you understand the behavior and you treat the wilderness with respect, there's not much that you need to be too terrified of if you've been trained to operate in an area like this. It is a good question though. I suppose the one thing that I would be very afraid of course, is the malaria mosquito, Anopheles mosquitoes, because they tend to cause a real trouble for everybody out here. Not so much in this area, but certainly in northern parts of Africa, the mosquito is definitely the animal that causes the most harm to human populations. Malaria is still a major issue, especially in the northern parts of Zambia and into Tanzania and various other parts of Africa. Out here, it's not so bad. It's starting to spit a bit, Andre. Is your camera alright? Okay. So everybody, just to keep you posted, if it does start to rain, I don't think it's going to rain heavily at all, but if it does start to rain, we won't be able to sort of continue the drive. We will probably have to pull a rain cover over us, and we can have a question and answer session if you like, under the cover of our sort of plastic sheeting, but we won't be able to drive around quite like we normally would. As I say that, Scott, who's just over off to the right hand side there, has covered up his vehicle and Brian, and they're huddling like gypsies, trying to avoid the moisture. Of course, cameras, batteries, large-scale mobile electrical units and water do not mix at all well. Petrichor, there we go. Thank you, Jess, on Twitter. Petrichor, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. There is a smell of petrichor in the air from the moisture that has touched the ground and is releasing the beautiful sense of the soil and the earth into the air. Petrichor, I'm going to say it 20 times. Petrichor, 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 petrichor. There we go, petrichor. Thank you, Jess. What's it called, Chandra? Petrichor, there we go. Georgianne, thank you. You allowed me to just call it wet earth rather than petrichor, but alas, I would feel guilty if I did that. So petrichor it is. Andre, will you just tell me if it gets too wet? It may look a little ridiculous from where you're sitting for me to be talking about it becoming too wet for us to carry on, but like I say, electronics and moisture are not friends, not happy bedfellows. It's interesting, there are some breaks in the cloud though, so maybe this will go away. Away from Fiji, we have a question. What time is it in Fiji? Trent, in Fiji, I mean probably tomorrow in Fiji, almost. It's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you very much. And you want to know, do the animals out here ever lie down? Do they ever sleep? Do the prey animals, how do they manage to sleep with all of the nasty carnivores after them? Trent, they do sleep. They don't sleep soundly like you and I sleep. Well, I hope you sleep soundly. So I certainly do. And they go into a sort of semi-state of sleep. They will lie down, especially on moonlit nights when they can see what's going on. But there will always be one or two that are up and looking around. A whole herd will never go to sleep completely. So, Trent, they do lie down. Things like giraffe, for example, they have the most interesting lying down strategy. They just fold their legs up underneath them and they keep their heads up. So they will probably doze quietly and then open their eyes and look around. But nothing out here can afford to sleep completely soundly, except maybe an elephant baby. And they are then surrounded by the protective herd. And also, I've seen rhinos sleeping completely soundly in pans where the water is, and they're in the mud, and it's a hot day, and they're in the shade, and they will sleep, and they actually snore. It's quite amusing to watch. Lions, of course, who fear nothing except other lions, will fairly soundly. The rest are going to take much of the time. Good question, Trent. Then, of course, you get things like bush babies, which are little primates, and they go into holes in trees during the day, and they actually go into something as sort of temporary hibernation or torpor in order to save energy, and so they will go into a very deep sleep indeed. But they're protected by a burrow or at least a tree hole. I can't see if he's still under his rain cover. Off to the east tracks of the Nkahuma now.
Hello everyone, and welcome on board with myself, Scott, and I'm teamed up with Brian on camera today. It's, as you well aware, a bit of a cold and drizzly morning, but the good news is that the Nkahuma Pride have crossed back south into Djuma, and that's what we're busy doing now. We're busy trying to track down this pride of 7 lions. Now Aubrey's checking one road to the right of us, and we're checking this road, and the lions are somewhere in between us, between Aubrey's road and Sandy Patch Road, and hopefully it won't take long for us to find them. and when we do, maybe they'll still be on the move, still hunting, and that'll be great. If not, the other likelihood is that they could be curled up and sleepy, trying to keep warm in this cool weather, but cool weather is good for predators. I must admit I actually missed their tracks when crossing back south. Maybe I was too busy concentrating on the drizzle that we were getting that was wetting our equipment a little bit, but either way, thankfully Aubrey double checked where I had gone and we found their tracks that do come south into Djuma. And it's always a little bit embarrassing when you've driven a road and another guy drives down 2 minutes later and informs you that you've missed a whole pride of lion crossing. But it does happen to everyone out here from time to time. This morning it was my turn, so hopefully we'll be able to redeem ourselves, or at least myself, and help Aubrey find these lion now. And let's just make sure I concentrate now and don't miss the tracks again. That's why I'm just going to drive very, very slowly. Question through from Joshua in Texas, and I don't exactly understand what you mean, Joshua, but are you asking whether the weather will ever kill a pride of lion? If so, it's highly, highly unlikely. Even in flood conditions, lions can swim unless they were to get struck by lightning, but it's unlikely that a whole pride of lion can get struck by one bolt of lightning. But animals do occasionally get struck from time to time. It's mainly the taller animals like the giraffe, but even then it's not very common. What is more common though is fires caused by lightning, and as a result of that, where the animals could get killed. But I've never heard of a pride of lion being caught in a fire and killed, although it could well have happened. The bushfires in this area can really rage, and there's so much dry vegetation that the fuel load to feed the fire can result in incredible blazes. And after a very, very dry season like this during our first rains, one of those bolts of lightning that do come from, yay, the lion tracks. Let's just get a hold of Aubrey and I'll be back with you shortly, Joshua, but this is very important that we update Orbs immediately. Orbs tracks on Aubrey is very close to Voyatella access, still heading south. Now what I'd like to do is try and position the vehicle so that and if we just look over to Orbs, we're probably 50 meters east of Voyatella access, and still continuing down ahead, so I'm sure they'll come out on Voya's access. So there you can see all the lion tracks, not very clearly, and that's typical in overcast weather, and that's my excuse for not seeing the tracks earlier. It can be quite difficult to see tracks when there's flat light like we're experiencing now. Give me a second, James, let me just see where they go from Aubrey's Voyatella access. What might be worthwhile is checking the Power Lines Road. There's that game trail that runs from Aubrey's down to the power lines. Looks like they might head down there. Sorry everyone, but I'm just trying to update James as well as to what's going on. And I'm just going to jump out here very quickly. I think these lines moved over this road between us this morning because I did drive here, and I'm fairly certain I wouldn't have missed their tracks crossing. They look crisp and fresh. I just need to get a good idea of where they go from here. Okay, very good, very good. You can actually see where the lions lay down behind us for a moment, and we are close to them, so I think it won't be long until we find these lions. And Aubrey's just arrived behind us, so maybe we're going to let him go in front. Do you want to go in front, Orbs? It looks like they'll go up this way. Alright. Because at least you've got William who can see tracks, not like me. Sorry about earlier. No problem. Have a good morning, everyone. Good morning. And again, I apologize, but I'm just going to update as to the latest tracks. James, they don't take that game trail towards power lines, they actually veer more north up Weir's access. I've let Aubrey go ahead of me, but maybe it's worth checking on pilot planes from power lines towards Weir's access. So, now we're going to head in the opposite direction to the tracks, and the reason for that is that even though the lines are heading in one direction, we can only check so many roads, and rather let Aubrey with his tracker go ahead of us, try to keep on their trail. And there are 3 vehicles now working this area, so James and myself and Aubrey. James and Aubrey are actually going to be closer to the action than we are now, but that's fine because the lines could well have changed direction. And we're going to do a big loop around and check the power lines there that I actually initially asked James to check. There's a chance James said on the radio that he could have also changed direction again, so, and that he also may have missed those tracks. Okay, well Joshua, thank you for clearing up your question earlier, and it was nothing to do with the weather. It was whether one pride of lions or coalition of lions may totally wipe out another, and yes, that certainly is possible and does happen. The Majingilan coalition, which is still operational to the south of us, and we may get to see them one day, possibly on the Arathusa airstrip, but they typically don't tend to come as far north as us. But that coalition of lion entirely wiped out the Mapocho coalition. They killed the remaining members of that coalition. And even when the Mapocho coalition came through themselves before they were wiped out, they killed an incredibly large amount of lions. And some prides were completely decimated. It is usually, though, the coalitions may be completely killed, so the males will kill all the males, and it's not that common to have an entire pride of lioness killed by marauding males. It wouldn't really make too much sense, but if they put up too much resistance, the males will kill them. Still on the topics of lion and killing. Janet would like to know if a private lioness would have ever passively killed one male lion, and I'm certain that's happened. Most of these variables that you ask us probably have happened, but it's important to remember that there are so many prides of lion within Africa that a lot of these things can happen and will happen at some stage, even though it may not be likely. And what will unfold here at Djuma will vary from what may have happened in the past with other prides of lion, and the only way for us to know what is going to happen is to wait and see. And we can hypothesize for days on end as to what may happen, but the variables are basically endless. And that's something also important to remember. Just because one thing may have happened somewhere once upon a time doesn't mean it's going to happen again here. So I caught the end of one of Aubrey's transmissions there, and it sounds like the lines are continuing west towards Arethusa over Impala Plains Road, so he's going to go and check the boundary with Arethusa. Luckily for us, if they do cross in there, we will be able to follow them, but sadly he won't. Aubrey can't go on to Arethusa. And that'll be sad, seeing as he's done so much hard work in finding these tracks and investing time in tracking them, but it is one of those realities. In most wilderness areas you work in, there will be a boundary at some point where you cannot go. You can never have enough land. And because of the little spots of drizzle, Brian's going to have to occasionally give the lens a little bit of a wipe. And I guess that is the beauty of being on a live safari. There may be some glitches along the way, but it's no different to being a guest out here. If it rains, it certainly will have an impact, and we'll do our best to stay off for as long as we can, but in the coming months we are going to have some trouble with the rain. Sometimes the rain can be so torrential that the roads are closed, or most of the roads are closed, and you can only drive on one or two of the main access roads. There will be some limiting factors with the rain. Also, off-roading is very, very difficult. Actually can't do it. In some areas of ours you'll get stuck and cause a lot of damage to the earth whilst getting stuck and trying to get unstuck. It can cause very deep ruts and damage. To avoid
by the technical trials of broadcasting high definition live out of the Greater Kruger National Park. I think the weather is having a lot to do with it. Anyway, Eugene is rushing around like a mad thing and seems to be having some success, because we are back with you. I'm afraid we've had to leave the lion tracks that Scott was following. We were helping out there, but because they are out of range of the currents of the tower that is nearest to that area, we've come out of that area and we're now heading to the east, and we'll be alone in the east, and that's quite nice sometimes too. And Edward, don't worry, Eugene did not hit anything incorrect with the hammer. I think he's probably hitting everything correctly, and that's why you now see us again. So our plan now is going to be to head off to the eastern side of the reserve, see what we can spot there, see if we can pick up some tracks, and we'll keep you posted. Well, we won't keep you posted because you'll be with us, so you'll be abreast of all developments as they happen. Just a quick stop here, if you don't mind, Jean-Ray, at that green Balanites Mogami tree there. That green tree there is going yellow, and it's an odd time for it to be going yellow, of course. But there are 3 or 4 different trees that do this. Jackalberry trees and these torchwood trees do the same thing. And what they do is that they turn yellow now, they'll lose their leaves very quickly and then gain them again quickly. So they're sort of semi-deciduous. They're not quite evergreens and they're not quite deciduous. Ergo, they are, Jean-Ray, semi-deciduous. Right, good. Fascinating little stop that, wasn't it? We're going to carry on to the east. So maybe just a bit of an explanation for some of you as to how things work out here. Darlene, I'm going to get back to what I was going to say. Darlene, very nice question. What's going to happen to the game drives when the rainy season starts? Well, the first thing to understand, of course, is that the rainy season is hardly like the rainy season in the middle of a tropical rainforest. Indeed, we only get about 400 to 500 millimeters of rain in this area, and they tend to come in very large storms. So when they're fairly brief deluges, and then it clears up again. So if it does rain like that, I'm afraid the broadcast will either be conducted from underneath some sort of rain shelter, but the other actual game drives will cease because we are unable to move in the rain because we will destroy everything, set the car on fire, and possibly explode in the wilderness. None of which are particularly enjoyable outcomes. And so, Darlene, the game drive will stop, but the broadcast may well continue, dependent on whether we have a rain shelter from which to operate or not. But like I say, the rain is short. It's not, I mean, the rainy season is not, it's not going to rain every day. So it really won't, I don't think it's going to affect us too much, I hope. And if it does affect us, it will most likely be in the afternoons when the big thunderstorms roll in. And there are such special things to see, those thunderstorms. So just on the subject of our technical issues, how this works is that there are a number of, firstly what happens is that the camera takes a picture of me, then it goes up out of an aerial on the back of the vehicle. That goes off to one of 3 towers that we have here. One is situated near our camp, and that covers the eastern part of the reserve. That's where we're heading now. That's the one that's functioning. One is just near here called the Gowrie repeater, and it does this sort of western sector of Djuma. And then there's one on Arethusa that covers most the western side of Arethusa. And once the signal has gone from here to the tower, it goes up to a satellite, as far as I understand it. Then it goes off to London, and from London it goes to the rest of the world. All this all happens, of course, at the speed of light, so that what you are watching is pretty much exactly as it's happening. But when one of those towers goes down, obviously our coverage becomes a little bit more difficult. Let's go down here, Jean-Ray. And on the subject of rain, we are still getting the odd spittle of rain. Debbie in Vancouver, where I think it rains substantially more than it does here. If you want to know how much rain will we have to get before we see a substantial difference in the colour out here? Well, Debbie, for the grass to flush, we're going to need probably about 10 to 15 millimeters of rain. and that is, well, that's just under an inch. So after the first inch or so of rain, or just less than an inch, you'll see a noticeable difference in the color of the grass. The trees, of course, are going to flush regardless, most of them anyway, and that's because they are operating with a much deeper root system, so they can get to the water table, and they tend to flush according to the day length rather than according to the amount of rain that's fallen. Grasses, which have adventitious root systems, so they don't have a long tap root that goes to the water table, they rely on surface water, so they will need probably about 15 millimeters to 20 millimeters of rain before they'll flush. Very nice question, Debbie. Probably a bit more rainy in Vancouver than it is here. Did I see a giraffe there, or is it a tree? You don't see a giraffe, do you? Deep and abiding. I thought I saw a giraffe's neck sticking out, but I think it was a tree. Oh well, alas and alack. Forge ahead, fearless in our task. Right, we're now near quarantine clearings, a very large clearing. And we centre quite a lot of our activities around here because it's a good spot, it's very beautiful, it's quite high up, and the animals like it because it's clear. Driving along, I'm going to answer a question from Trudy, a very nice question, but I'm hoping to actually find what you're asking about before I answer the question. Trudy, you want to know about termite mounds, and you say, why after all the effort it takes to build them, do the termites leave? Trudy, the termites don't leave so much as die. So remember, especially with the big mounds, underneath the surface is a queen, and the queen is about that long. She looks like a giant sort of, she looks like a termite in front, and behind her she's got a sort of bag. Her abdomen swells, and it produces up to 20,000 eggs a day. Now once she dies, the termites will just carry on doing their thing, but eventually, of course, they will die, and if they're not being regenerated the whole time, she can live for up to 15 years, and she will often be replaced. But if she isn't replaced, then the termite mound will die, and that's why it sort of stops functioning, and then it becomes a very useful home for hundreds of other things. There's one just up here, we'll have a quick look at it. Can you see the bird there, Jean-Bray? It's just flying over. Shauna and Ambrosia in Oklahoma. You want to know, does my knowledge come from books or experience? It comes from both, and I'll get back onto that now. I'm just going to show you this termite mound. Sorry, Robbie, I didn't tell you I was getting out. So, Trudy, this is of course the termite mound of the fungus-growing termite Macrotermes natalensis, and in the middle, underneath, is that huge queen of about that size, and she's producing about 20,000 eggs a day. And when she dies, the termite mound becomes inactive, because eventually the workers and the soldiers themselves will die, and they will not be replaced. She can be replaced, but if she isn't, the mound will become inactive. Then it becomes a home for hundreds of other things. This one has definitely got some dwarf mongoose living in it. I can see some dung. Here is mongoose dung. It will definitely provide a home for snakes sometimes, lizards, and often bigger creatures like wild dogs, warthogs and hyenas will also come and live in them, but only once they've been opened up by the aardvark or...
Welcome back everyone, look at this! What is going on here? It could be a clan takeover. It looks like they're bullying that one hyena. Let's just try to get a bit closer. This is crazy. I don't know what is happening. It's literally just happened. We've just seen them come onto the road, and it looks like 3 of them are teaming up against the one. Earlier on they looked almost happy and playful. It's maybe something more serious. It's hard to tell. They look covered in mud. Look at this. I think it could just be playful behavior, and I think they're excited by the fact that they've been swimming in a waterhole, it looks like. So it's not blood they're covered in, and they're right here all around us. Other 2 you can see playing off in the background. Absolutely incredible, and quite similar behavior, you could say, to what James saw the other day. And again, it was water related. The hyena seemed really excited and happy. The fact that we haven't heard any vocalizations is also quite interesting. Now, I've never seen a hyena behaving like this before. And initially I actually thought they were wild dogs running down the road to us. Roll back a little bit. Now they are such complex animals, and it looks like there's a smaller individual bullying a slightly larger one there, and hierarchy plays such an important role in hyena society. And that's what's interesting here. The one that's holding its tail up is showing signs of dominance, and the one that's actually bigger than it is putting its bum down to the ground.
Hello everybody. I believe that you were having a wonderful hyena sighting there, and I'm really sorry that you've had to come back and hear more about inactive termite mounds with me at the moment. Anyway, Gari Tower went down. We don't know why, but we're going to carry on towards the east as was our original plan. So, fascinating termite discussion that we had there. I do find termites really interesting. And just to continue the answer about whether my knowledge comes from books or from being out here, and the answer is both, of course. I find it very important that in order to start creating theories and unpacking the amazing things that happen out here, you do have to have a certain amount of book knowledge to start with, because that does help with a base. And the textbooks, of course, should never be used as gospel, because so often, as the cliche goes, the animals don't read the textbooks. So a nice base from the books, but you've got to learn while you're out here as well, and try and keep abreast of all the developments in research. And then the largest termite mound I've ever seen out here, Siberia Zumi. You'd like to know what the biggest one is that I've seen. I've seen one on Arethusa that Brent found, and that's probably about, I'd say probably about 5 meters off the ground. So that's probably about the biggest I've seen out here. Jean-Bert, what's the biggest you've seen? That's probably the biggest out here. But the most impressive thing, of course, is the old tip of the iceberg concept, where the termite mounds do extend hugely under the ground. Why the heck did I miss that? There's a really exciting little bird here. Not that little, but large bird. Predator bird. A Wahlberg's eagle, pale form. This is an unusual form of the Wahlberg's eagle. And I saw him flying around the other day. And he doesn't look very pale there, of course, but he has a white front. Look at that. Lovely little eagle. One of the small eagles that we get here. And he will be, I'm sure his oh look, Jean-Andre, there's his partner in the nest. See that? They're two pale forms. I've never seen two pale form Wahlbergs together. By pale form I mean that they are white coloured down the front. They're normally brown, that's the most common one. And these two pale form Wahlbergs obviously have that nest. That's their nest just to the right of your picture. And that's probably Mrs. Wahlberg just come out of the nest. This is spectacular. Oh wow. Normally you'll find a pale form with a brown one because the brown ones are just more common. And to find two pale form like this in a nest is spectacular. And they'll come back to the same nest every year. And they've been away, of course. They've just returned from a sojourn into northern Africa. That's where they overwinter. So I wonder if she hasn't laid her eggs already in that rather uncomfortable looking pile of sticks. I think pretty poor excuse for a home, but I suppose it works for the Wahlbergs. They're one of the most common eagles that we get here. Just while you're looking at it, I'm just going to quickly talk to Scott. He's calling me on the radio. Go ahead. No, I didn't copy that, Scott. Scott, I have driven those roads. I didn't pick anything up. That's not to say I didn't miss them, but if it's a whole pride, I think it's unlikely I would have missed them. I didn't drive the whole of Zoe's. Isn't that just a lovely sighting? So I've seen them flying around here, and I didn't realize, of course, that this nest was an active one. And this is why it's so important to spend time and many seasons in a place if you truly want to understand it. So this nest, of course, is now being recolonized, and we will be able to see next year whether the same birds come back to it, which they should. Beautiful. Alright, that is the Wahlberg's eagle. Two thereof, two pale form Wahlberg's eagles. And what I'm just going to quickly do is show you a picture of the rest of them. And they are, or just the different colour morphs that you get. They're one of the most variable eagles that we get here. There they are. So what we have here, that's the pale form there, and that's what we've been looking at. pale form Wahlbergs. And the most common form, of course, is this sort of standard issue brown. You do get the very dark brown one there, but the most common being this one here. And I've never seen two pale forms like this in a pair. Beautiful. Right, let us press on from here. We're going to head off, continue going to the east. Scott is going to be watching tracking the lions here, and if the guy repeater does come back up and the lions are there, then I'm sure he will find them and he'll be in the area with them. Approaching the Gauri Dam, where I'm assuming there's not much going on, otherwise you would have told us. The viewers on the Djuma Dam cam are vociferous in their reports, which is excellent. Looking at some mongoose dung earlier, and Anne-Marie, you'd like to know if mongoose are part of the Wahlbergs menu. Yes, they would be, I suppose, but Wahlbergs tend to eat quite a lot in the way of reptiles, lizards, and perhaps the odd blue-headed tree agama and that sort of stuff, but they will take definitely small rodents and small carnivores like the dwarf mongoose. They won't take anything bigger than a dwarf mongoose, I don't think. They'll probably even take the odd ground-dwelling bird as well. They're not big eagles. They're probably about that size. So they're not the largest eagles that we get by any stretch, but they're certainly one of the most beautiful. And we get lots of questions like this about parenting, and this is interesting, the human psychology behind some of our questions. Ooh, that's pretty disgusting. We're going to have a look at that. Rena, lovely question. Will the male Wahlbergs help raise the chicks and feed? Absolutely. As in with many birds, the male plays a huge role in parenting and raising the chicks, unlike in the mammal world, of course. We're just going to have a look here. Look at that pit of swirling, boiling, enormous catfish. There's a huge catfish in there. And yesterday evening we were watching some storks trying desperately to catch something to eat, and you can see why they would be totally unsuccessful in a pool like this. Those catfish are far, far, far too big for any stork out here to eat. They are now approaching the size when a hyena and a leopard might come in and fish them out. The only thing saving them at the moment from hyenas and leopards, and maybe even lions, is the fact that the mud is so soft in that area, and what that does is that it just makes it very difficult for them to get in there and pull one out. We were talking about the Wahlberg's nest and various other birds' nests, especially the weavers earlier this morning. And Jan, you want to know, will they knock down their old nests? Jan, they don't knock down their old nests, you know. They just ignore them and abandon them, and they'll build next to them. They may even pirate bits and pieces from the old nests. That is amazing, eh, Chandra? Oh. I, of course, have been into that water very recently, trying to fish out a drone that was supposed to be filming them from above, but in fact decided to join them in that mud. Now that was a fairly unpleasant experience. Right, on we go. nothing in the way of spectacular tracks at this stage, but Scott is still hot on the heels of the Nkahuma Pride off underneath the Gari repeater, so I will keep you posted on any developments there. He's also still with those hyenas who seem to be flinging themselves about with gay abandon. It's not warming up, is it, John? Brrr. Nice idea we've got here from Samantha. When we find a bird's nest, have we ever put up a camera trap for it? We haven't, no. There is one, I think there is actually a Wild Earth camera on a American bald eagle's nest somewhere in North America. I'm not sure exactly where, but there are lots, apparently there are lots of them. So if you would like to watch the progress of a bird's nest, you have simply to go to the Wild Earth website and they will direct you in the correct position. We don't have any here at Djuma. Did you get it? No. There's a little bird up front here called a hoopoe, onomatopoeic name. There he is. Really nasty thick tree. And we just got a question about the Wahlberg's eagle and whether they pair for life. Also another interesting one that human beings like to ask regularly. They do, they're monogamous certainly, so they don't have a polygamous or polygynous relationships. But they do they pair for life? Yeah, they probably do pair, until one of the two dies. Then I think they probably move on quite quickly. But yes, they'll probably pair until one of the pair dies. I often wonder, there are lots of birds that are monogamous completely, so they will only have one partner at a time. But whether those pair bonds last for life or whether they split up and then meet up with another partner and become monogamous for a while again, I don't know. Sometimes it's for life, like with swans, the famous case of swans. And I think Wahlbergs are pretty much in that category. A lone impala ram, Chandra. We'll look at him, ask him why he is alone in the wilderness today. Just on the subject of eagles, Edward, you want to know if I've ever seen a Mongolian hunter using, I think it's a golden eagle that they use, to go hunting for wolves, I think you said. I didn't know that they hunted wolves, I must say. I know that they hunt various bits and pieces of stuff to eat. Edward, I certainly haven't seen it live, but I have seen it on TV. And I'm fascinated to hear that they use eagles to catch wolves. That really is astonishing. It is amazing the repositories of indigenous knowledge that exist throughout the world, where people have evolved all sorts of astonishing strategies to survive in trying conditions. The Mongolian steppes are not easy places to live, and the people that live there have developed some incredible strategies to survive in very cold, dry, and trying conditions. And their little ponies, and with their eagles. That young, well, not young, that's an adult impala, and he doesn't seem to have any friends. You do not want to be an impala alone in the bush. It is the fastest way to get dead. They're an awkward size, and by that I mean that they are not big enough to pose any kind of physical threat to a genuine predator like a leopard, a lion, or a hyena, or a wild dog, or even a cheetah. And they're not small enough to hide. And that means that they need to be in a herd. So that's why they normally are in a herd, and I'm interested that that one is on his own. I don't know why he would be on his own. Who knows? Let's carry on. Forge ahead to the east. Hello Osgood on Twitter. Osgood, that is a fascinating name. I'd be interested to know where it comes from or how you got it. And you want to know about owls, and you say in the drought or dry times like this, will owls have clutches? You say that where you are in California, you watch a pair of owls and they haven't had a clutch for a while because of the prolonged drought that you've had there. Osgood, I don't know exactly. I do know that owls and all birds will breed in times of favorability, and I think sometimes I think the way to look at it is like this. I don't think there's any conscious decision. I think you'll find that if there's sufficient nutritional stress in the adults, they won't produce a clutch. And at the moment that definitely isn't the case. It's been dry, but we're not in the midst of a major drought. So I would say that the owls and the other birds will definitely produce clutches this year. If it continues to be, if we have a succession of dry years, then certainly the nutritional status of the larger birds will be such that they probably won't be able to produce clutches, and certainly won't be able to raise them successfully. Very good question. Throughout these drives, I'm always interested by how much your questions make me think, and make me think, well, I better go and research that, and I better go and read about that. I thought I knew about that, but it's not so clear in my mind anymore. So please keep them coming. They are great to have.